Um, so I know you're probably a little intimidated
Yes.
being on
Oh,
my.
by your tattoos and your shoulders. Yeah.
Um, I miss you, man.
Miss you too, buddy.
How you doing?
I don't like this. I don't like anything about this shit. I guess none of us do.
It's getting a little ridiculous, isn't it?
I'm curious to see what historians are going to say about this. This has been a massive reaction. Now, whether or not it has been an overreaction, only time and history can tell. But it's going to be very interesting. I'm very curious
You,
because we do have epidemiologists who know a lot more than you and I do,
right.
calling the shots at this point because it's a new virus and it's a virus that apparently can incubate. Most people can be asymptomatic but still contagious. I don't know. I can't speak to any of that. But to shut down the entire world, good for the environment, I'll tell you that much. But
Right.
it's just fucking. It's going to be very interesting to see what history actually says about this collective effort. Was it mass hysteria or was it necessary? I don't know. I find myself saying, I don't know.
Would be really interesting. And you, like, when do you think the movies will come out? So we'll actually be alive and watch the movies of this event, the dramatization.
Well, what I think is interesting is that doomsday scenarios kind of exist. Armageddon does exist in terms of, this is a black swan, right? You ever read, I think it's Nassim Taleb's book, The Black Swan? The idea that every once in a while with the swan population, there's a black swan born. It's an aberration. It's an irregularity. And whenever events like World War II, nobody thought World War II would be World War II. Nobody even, the soldiers that went to World War I, the soldiers that ventured into that meat grinder had no idea of the technology that was waiting for them, the machine guns, the mortars and things that was going to lay waste to the old way of doing warfare, which was, chivalry, wearing hats with plumes and charging with great bravery toward the other side. And they got cut down. The history's full of these events where we just don't know how to predict them. They catch people so off guard that they can have massive wave-like ramifications. And so it's a very sort of, it's got me thinking about a lot of other things that could happen. You always have this sense. I have to be totally honest. Like, let's just take climate change. I'm not even a religious person, but I find myself, when people talk about climate change, I swear to God, I say this, and I know better. I go, God wouldn't let that happen to us ultimately. We're humanity.
Right.
I mean, and scientists are like, what the fuck are you talking about? A super volcano could wipe us off. A plague, as Bill Gates has been talking about for a long time, could truly, wipe us off the face of the earth. These are the kinds of things that I have so much faith in humanity and the spirit of humanity and our ability to adapt that I'm just an ultimate optimist. So I probably would not have shut everything down. I would have tried to be more targeted with my quarantine. But then again, I don't know anything about this virus. I don't know anything about this stuff.
So I love all that. What's been going through my head, and it's starting to happen, is the virus is dangerous and it kills certain people. And it's, of course, but it's out there and it's an invisible enemy and it's out there. If the world economy collapses and you've got millions of people going bankrupt, you got people who committed suicide and went crazy when the market crashed, let alone.
Dude, I always say this, you're right. Does anybody know what 45%, 50% unemployment looks like? It's a disaster. And I don't think, my issue is I do not believe that blanket shutdowns are a viable alternative to this challenge. I don't think we can sustain this. And I know where you're getting at.
Well, this is what I was saying is, like, you've got virus X danger, but then when you add social collapse, rioting, chaos, how many purges has Frank done?
2, I know.
Well, the Purge 3 will be real. It'll be a documentary.
I know, man.
And so But I'm looking at, you've got the virus anyhow, but then you got a 100x it if you've got, right, like, and what is this, letting out criminals so they don't catch corona? And now you see like the criminals you see in the news, there was a murder recently, like somebody who was let out. I mean, it's just, I don't
this has been getting me to think a lot about, this is really interesting because the virus has broken us, as if this country needs to be more fractured, but the virus has done a really interesting thing. It has broken Americans into two different teams broadly.
right.
Like, it's very interesting to me that conservatives, Republicans, whatever they might be, tend to be more in favor of keeping the economy going.
Right.
And I'm drawing broad, but it's very interesting. Maybe it's a personality difference, and you have quote unquote liberals or people that are more on the left or Democrats, from what I've seen, at least from the media, who seem to be advocating for much more caution and a longer closure of businesses, etc., for the sake of our infirm, our elderly, and our most vulnerable. That's a noble cause. And I wonder if it's just because you've got two different kinds of people. You've got people that are very compassionate and think about the most vulnerable, and then you have the practical, who because anybody who tells you we don't put a price on human life in a society is simply either lying to themselves, to you, or is naive. Let me give you a couple examples, if I might.
Please.
You could easily, if you really care about, let's say, human life. I mean, if you were really serious about it, well, let's just start with the homeless. Let's start with the homeless in Los Angeles. 1,000 of them die a year or more. We would be in the streets mobilizing an effort at all costs to protect these people. Now, that's just not feasible. You know how hard it is to get somebody off drugs or who has mental illness. It's such a problem. So what we do is we go on our day. We bum out about it and everything else. If you really wanted to save lives, you would lower the speed limit to 25 miles an hour. And you would and anybody who went 10 miles over it, you'd take their license away forever. You know what that would do? Save a lot of lives. Mm-hmm. It might save 50,000 lives a year, but we're not going to do that because it's not, ready for this, worth it. It's a terrible thing to admit to ourselves, right? And so the question, the very uncomfortable question we have to ask ourselves eventually is, at what cost? When are we going to? When is this too much? When is the cost of closing down the entire country too much? Not worth it. It's a really uncomfortable question, but I think we have to ask it. And isn't there a smarter way to do this? And I, with all due respect and compassion to our leaders who got thrown into this thing, they're improvising. They don't know what to do. They're improvising. You can't have, my parents are 80. I don't want my parents dying. I'm very, very, very cognizant of our elderly and our infirm. I don't want anybody to die, for God's sake.
Right.
But we need a better solution, probably, don't we? And that's scary. I don't know what to do. Again, I keep saying I don't know.
Well, I'm gonna have a big question for you later, so you better think about what to do. You said something before about, smarter with, I forget how you worded it, but smarter with the quarantine. We know that certain ages, people with autoimmune deficiencies, respiratory illnesses, and this is all hypothetical, and it's easy to us sound smart when we read a tweet and we analyze something, or we get like we read highlight reels, and then our abstraction metacognition skills, we go, yeah, they should have done this. It's like when I'm teaching self-defense, I'm talking about the difference between like a sport fight where you agree to box, you agree to kickbox, you've got an idea what the rules of engagement are, who the bad guy is, and you can see him move. Here you have an invisible enemy, and this is the first rep. Like it's not like, okay, we've done this 3 times and now we kind of know what to do. And so there is a lot of educated guessing, but here's the thing, and I never really finished the thought. I was stuttering and stammering about it, but you've got whatever damage the virus is going to do, it's doing if we're at work or we're sitting down. And I understand the whole flatten the curve, but I think there's so much misinformation, disinformation with the whole, like, have you read the reports that like heart attacks are down and flu deaths are down, all that? And then when you follow the money, you realize that, well, that's all the memes. Like everyone dies of, man jumps out of airplane, without his parachute, dies of COVID-19, right? Like all the meme jokes. When you realize, oh my God, like you're getting X amount of money if you write on the death certificate CV-19. Like you look at that and you go, okay, that's wrong. If somebody was on their deathbed and you're guessing or going, they must have died from COVID-19. We had given them 6 months to live and now they're dying 6 months early. It must have been the virus. Like there's like lots of evidence that that's happening. And so
that's why I say, like I said, the historians are will find this out. We're gonna learn a lot from this.
Right.
And that's one of the things we're gonna learn.
So in keeping with like where I was going with the math is that if you have, everyone goes bankrupt, people are freaking losing their minds. You got divorces, you got domestic violence, you got mental health issues, you got suicides. At what point are certain people who have zero money, zero food, overpopulated apartments, are they going to just start looting and then rioting? And then what happens when the people who are a little bit, more organized, who have guns or willing to fight, start going, well, now we have the Walking Dead without the zombies.
I hear you, bro. I mean, listen, I swear to God, and you're one of them. I've been like, look, I'm not getting caught with my pants down next time. I'm going to create a network of people, and you'll be in it, where I want access to a well. I want solar power. I want maybe a fucking lake or a pond I can fish from. I want generators. I mean, this is what happens is you start to go, we're vulnerable. Yeah. And there's always going to be a black swan. And it's exactly what you talk about when it comes to self-defense and survival. You don't see it coming. It's like you don't see the wild animal when you're in the woods, and you don't see the bear until it's on top of it. Yeah. There's so many things like that. And one thing I know is I need a group of people, like-minded people I'm going to have to rely on. And I want, this is very human and very natural, but I want to be able to protect my family. I want my weaponry. I want my vantage point. I want my food source and my water source, because in that sense, this has been a huge wake-up call for me. Am I going to be a doomsday prepper? Maybe. Maybe I am run by fear in this sense. That's normal.
Listen, but you're right. I got asked a couple of weeks ago, how you doing? I said, well, I wish I had prepared for the pandemic before the pandemic. It's like
I know, dude, I'm pissed at myself. But again, part of being a human being is there are so many flanks to cover, and you can never cover all your flanks. It's what I'm writing about with my stand-up. I've always been terrified of being vulnerable. The truth is, we're vulnerable. You can cover all your bases. You can have all the freezers of meat. You can store lentils and rice. You can have all the guns. You can build a fucking 20-foot wall. You can't stop irregular cell division in your body, or God forbid your child's body, or a virus that just comes out of nowhere and flattens people. So this is the motherfucker of being a human being and this experience. So I don't know. There's this wonderful adage I've always loved, where the samurai, the shogun, comes in with his ronin into the town, and he would come in and kill everybody if they didn't leave immediately and leave the food and everything for his troops. And there was a Buddhist monk who wouldn't leave, and they said, "You have to go. He's on his way. His messengers told us he's coming." It's kind of the Genghis Khan thing, and he's going to kill us all. And when the shogun rode into town, the Buddhist monk was sitting in the lotus position in the middle of the road. And the shogun said, "Do you not know who I am?" I am the man who can cut you into 1,000 pieces without batting an eye. And the Buddhist monk looked up at him calmly and said, and I am the one who can be cut into 1,000 pieces without batting an eye. And I thought to myself, I wish I had more of that.
Right.
Right. And as we get older, maybe that's what to embrace. Maybe that's what it is. I don't know. I'm being way too fucking dramatic here, but
no,
I can't help it.
But that's that dignity. Like when we look at, historic, we read the historic stories of courage and bravery, and there's like the people who have that dignified death, as opposed to you and I be screaming, no, take somebody else.
Yeah. Have you ever read Shogun, the book?
No, the original one.
James Clavell. It's an excellent book about medieval Japan and a Portuguese trader who gets sort of captured by.
I might have way back in the day. I was thinking, did you ever read the novel Musashi, which is also?
I love it. I love it.
Huge.
Yes. Musashi's great. Yeah, I've read a lot of Japanese literature, and Miyamoto Musashi is the Book of Five Rings, and it's awesome.
Yeah, crazy shit.
Yeah.
So let me ask you some specific COVID questions, because that was I'll have you on another when we get through this, which hopefully will be super. My birthday is May 2nd, and it would be really good if they turn the world back on for my birthday, so I could go to Nobu.
I'll make a call. I'll make a couple calls.
Good. I appreciate that. So the first question I have, real question, is how you doing?
I'm good, man. I mean, I'm lucky enough to have a podcast. I'm writing a shitload. I treat this as an opportunity. Spend more time with my kids, with my closest friends. I just got tested. I'm negative.
I saw that.
Yeah.
I thought it was a pregnancy test at first.
It is a pregnancy test. I speak to my parents every day. I speak to my sister every day. So I'm trying to treat it like as an opportunity. I've sold some shows, which is great. I've got a bunch of stuff waiting in the wings, but it requires a great deal of work. I have to solve a whole bunch of creative problems in my head and put them down on paper, and so that's always a responsibility and a privilege at the same time. But I'm doing things like bike riding with my kids, and I never used to do that stuff. So but again, I'm lucky. I have some reserves, man. And a lot of people don't. Right. And a lot of people I know don't. A lot of people I know are in real trouble. This is no joke. I mean, there are people I know that don't have money for food, man. And that's crazy. I mean, that's crazy. It makes it very difficult for me to relax. People think I'm kidding when I say I'm worried about the economy. I'm not worried about me, man. I'm worried about my audience, the people that come to see me, who are working people. Those are the people I care about, I mean, I sound like a fucking politician, but I'm lucky, and I'm an idiot. I'm a misfit. I'm just lucky enough that I can finally, and it's new, make money doing what I love, but it's not always been this way. Right. And so, I know a lot of people that are really struggling, man. I mean, it's a problem. So
how's your family doing?
They're good.
What I mean when I am asking these questions, I'm asking them through the filter of this. It's not like, I spoke to mom and dad today. Like, I'm talking about like emotionally, psychologically.
Well, my father lost, I'm speaking out of turn here, but my father lost more than half his money, way more. I mean, it was a disaster, and he'll be okay. But it was crazy at one point. So I saw some of that. Now he'll be okay, but a lot of people are not. That's not a little thing. I fucking have heard a lot of reporters and people like shaming Americans for being more concerned about their 401k than human life. That's a bullshit choice that you're putting on us. Right. Don't tell me that losing my 401k is a small thing. It's a fucking disaster. And it's a catastrophe, maybe even a tragedy. And don't put it on Americans who lost their 401k, something they worked their whole life for, and then say you should be more concerned with people over there. No, that's not fair. No, that's not fair. Listen, it doesn't mean they don't care. It means that they don't even have time to care because they're so panicked and so terrified of being penniless in their fucking 60s and 70s.
You work your whole life, man, and then
it's no joke, man.
And you know, people who are still getting paid, who have armed guards and limos, stand around saying like, your business isn't essential, so you guys just stop working.
That drives me fucking crazy. I'm sorry. That's the other thing I'm very profoundly uncomfortable with.
Are you amazed that everyone just stood down? Like we're starting to get little protests, right? You heard about the four cops today that refused to do.
Because what happens is people start looking at stats. Now, is that a function of social distancing? The reason people have stood down is because none of us are epidemiologists. None of us even know who's talking to our leaders. Right. I don't know one name besides Fauci that's talking to our leaders. So all we're doing is we are all in a position to trust. And maybe this is a time to trust our government because this might be an emergency. Right. Maybe that's the case.
I think that's.
I hope they're right.
I think everyone did that collectively. But now, and here's the thing: is 2 weeks ago, my first podcast, I referred to this as our medical 9/11. And after the real 9/11, there were no politics. Everyone said terrorism bad. Let's stop terrorism. But that's not happening here. Now you've got way more, like you said, political divide, and you've got what appears to be manipulations of numbers to fear monger. You've got like scams where doctors are saying, yeah, like we've seen a decrease in heart attacks. We've seen a decrease in flu deaths.
But I'm going to be a little bit more. I'm going to be a little bit more charitable, and what I would maybe chalk it up to is that most of our medical personnel and epidemiologists just didn't know enough about this disease and still don't. There's still a great deal of ignorance. We just don't know as much as we should. And when you are an epidemiologist or a politician, you kind of have to err on the side of caution when it's this new a virus. Because can you imagine if you were Gavin Newsom and you didn't take measures and you lost 5% of the peak, because a lot of these medical professionals were erring on the side of caution, as medical epidemiologists do, because they're healers and that's how they probably think. And somebody said, it's like when a carpenter sees a nail. Carpenters tend to see everything as a nail that has to be knocked down. And maybe it's the same in epidemiologists, is how human beings behave. But they have to be cautious, so do politicians, when you're given numbers like, hey, dude, we could lose 6 million people. Well, as a politician, you go, holy fuck. Right. Gavin Newsom isn't a medical professional either. But when he has a board of people that congregate and he has these medical professionals who say, according to our models, now all we can work on is models. But what are models? Models are always changing. Models are moving targets. Right. According to interpretable data, a model is something that you are most certainly going to miscalculate with, but it's all we have. And the models we had initially were pretty grim. So I'm being more charitable. See, I tend to be less conspiracy minded not because I think people are good in government. I just don't think they're that competent or that organized. I tend to believe that government is just super incompetent. I think we got caught with our pants down, and I think we got caught totally unprepared and I don't blame anybody. How the fuck are we supposed to know something this crazy was going to happen this quickly? Right. Again, it's a black swan. So, we tend to be critical of people for not seeing this, but nobody saw it. And that's kind of how I feel. Nobody saw the financial disaster coming. Maybe 3 people did, if you read The Big Short. I mean, my father had been in the banking business his whole fucking life. And he was laughing at my brother-in-law who was younger, saying, I think we're headed for disaster. He's like, no, we're not. What are you talking? The banks fail? What? And guess what? So I'm going to go ahead and say I think that's where we're at. I want to be more charitable. But I think your questions and your suspicions are still important to take into account because they still may be relevant. They still may be.
But they could be both at work, right?
Correct.
You have this legit. I mean, people ask me, in our programs, they go like, "What's the counter to an ambush?" And I go, "There is no counter to an ambush. There's only a counter to a failed ambush." And this right? And so
Yeah.
this is an ambush. And now there's, like, you see all the reports coming out, about what they really think happened in China, with the stuff. And so there's so much other shit that's coming out, all this little, these little cues and clues and
Look,
but
if you were to tell me that that I'm cynical enough as I get older to believe that there are some Democratic politicians who may find it in their interest to keep things shut longer,
right.
so as to discredit the Republican opponents and get control of that. I can believe politics is that ugly, and
Yeah.
people might be doing
But
that.
they're not even hiding that.
Yeah, that might be the case. I think Trump's decision to defund the WHO is very interesting, and
right.
I find myself giggling about it because they are owned by China.
Right.
The WHO won't even admit that Taiwan exists as
Right.
a separate entity.
I just saw a United States, I think it was a senator, on the news saying this has nothing to do with China. Now it might have been like a like just saying this is Trump's fault, and nobody's going, well, but the Obama administration didn't replenish it's just a fucking nightmare. But let's move on.
China behaved duplicitously here.
Yeah.
China could have let us know. China said there's no human to human transmission.
Right.
And the WHO fucking parroted that. Come on. China comes out looking very bad. China is, please understand, the Chinese Communist Party is not our ally. I think we have a symbiotic relationship and we can continue to, but there needs to be a harder line maybe with China. I don't know. I'm not a trade specialist or a geopolitician, but I'm not.
What do you do exactly anyway?
I'm a fighter and a lover, dude. No, but I think that for the most part, our relationship with China, for the most part, and there are people that would disagree, has worked for America to an extent. We've certainly gotten cheaper goods, and it does seem that they put themselves in a position where they were better at manufacturing at a cheaper price.
Right.
Does that mean that American manufacturers can't compete? No. We were, before this fucking thing, at 3.2% unemployment. You know that's full employment. You know that's better than full employment. We didn't have enough workers, and because when you always have. In fact, 4.2% unemployment is considered full employment because there's called that frictional difference, which is that when people are you always have some unemployment because people are leaving their jobs and going to new jobs. Mm-hmm. And that in between is counted as unemployment because people file for benefits and stuff. So 3.2% before all this was more than full employment. That's incredible. We had the lowest unemployment among minorities in, I think, 50 years. I mean, we were gangbusters, man. So, it's been a very bitter pill to swallow, and I think for sure Trump was riding to a second victory because the Democrats were dumb enough to put someone like Biden up, and even though I've heard that he's got a lot of mainstream, affection, he's also kind of Obama light or Hillary heavy or whatever he might be.
Right.
I just don't see it. I just don't see him beating Trump with an economy like this.
It drives me crazy. Okay, let's jump back in here. I got a bunch of questions, and I'll let you go. We'll do another podcast where we can talk about fighting and humor and lovers and stuff like that. But this is kind of a heavy one, and I also I wrote a bunch of jokes for you for your next show. I'll email.
Thank you, buddy. I appreciate that. What would I do without Blauer humor?
Nice. Okay. You mentioned you created some shows and some more. So this is like a list of questions. So I've had very diverse guests on, from like ex-counterterrorist dudes to, martial arts instructors to guys who have online businesses to, and I've got like the famous legend, Bryan Callen.
Damn right.
So I've got a series of questions here. How how has this affected business, and more importantly, what have you done to adapt? You alluded to some of the stuff where you're writing, you're doing some stuff, but specifically in the context of like, this has changed your routine. You're a smart guy. What changed and how did you adapt to it?
Well, the thing that I do, my favorite thing to do of all time is to perform in front of a group of tightly, a massive group of people that are packed into a room live.
Right.
And I don't know when that's going to come back. I mean, that's the biggest bummer. And I was talking to Rogan about this. I was talking to Chris D'Elia about this. I was talking to all my friends who are comics. And we don't know when this is going to be a possibility. We just don't know. And that's very tough. So knowing that I'm not going to be able to stand up for a long time, I have added a third podcast per week. I'm doing 3 Fighter and the Kids a week. I am writing a shitload. I'm writing stand-up. I'm just taking this time to generate as much content as I can. My Instagram, I've got all kinds of ideas I want to do with my Instagram. So I'm doing what I can to make people laugh and to keep people entertained. That's important. We take that seriously. It's a privilege.
I dig it. When you're writing, do you use a stand-up desk?
No, I don't. I think writing's a mindset. So I'm always writing. I'm always thinking. I try to take any scaffolding or fencing away from the word work, and I try to make my life a process of discovery. I keep my mind open, so I'm exploring and I'm discovering. So that writing isn't writing. Writing sounds punitive. It sounds like work. I hate the word work. I like the word discovery. I like the word surprise. I like the word inspiration. So I just keep myself open, and most importantly, there's a mindset I use, which is anything is possible, and the genius belongs to all of us. It's a question of how malleable, how soft you can make your mind. You know, the Buddhists and a lot of martial arts artists talk about, when they meditate, they talk about how pliable and soft your mind is first thing in the morning. There are ways you can make creativity a habit. And that's what I'm most interested in now. There's so many distractions, but Picasso was painting incredible work up into his 90s when he was 90. So that was a mindset. That's what he did. It's what he did. Gabriel Garcia Marquez, who I believe won a Nobel Prize for Literature, wrote 1,000 Years of Solitude, Love in the Time of Colorado, etc. He never stopped writing, but he would just write 4 hours a day, no matter what, from 12 to 4 every day. Only 4 hours a day, but he's a giant in literature. Hemingway would write 8 hours a day and changed prose. He changed the way people write. He was revolutionary in how simple but beautiful his wording was. And he would write 8 hours a day, no matter what. And then he would drink his face off and live what he wrote. So for me, inspiration is the name of the game, not work.
I dig it. You sort of answered this, but these are just like, I'm just firing these questions because it peels the onion through the conversation. Best thing about the lockdown?
Intimacy. I can get closer to my children. I can get closer to my friends, even sometimes when I can't see them. I spend more time listening to them. I spend more time doing things like this with you. You know, I do podcasts, and it might be through Zoom, but at least we're all in this together. There's something very, I don't know. There's something very powerful about the fact that we're all vulnerable. We're all in the same boat, and we're all cooperating. We're all doing this shit. I can't believe I was driving down with my son today, and I saw everybody wearing masks. Not because they were afraid to get it. They just were being courteous to each other, so they didn't give anybody else COVID, possibly. And I appreciated that.
Interesting. I was talking to Jessie, who you know you're a big fan of hers, but I was talking to her. I tried to get her to come down and say hi, but she's hanging out with the girls. And I said, like, what do bank robbers who wear masks do? Are they going to wear a mask over their mask? I don't know. Can you look into that?
I think you're right.
Right?
I think that's exactly what they're going to do. They're going to wear their mask over their mask. That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll leave the humor to you. And before I tried to make a stand-up desk, because I'm standing at a stand-up desk, but it was a stand-up comic stand-up desk. But
I understand.
I'll send you a picture. You just ignored it. You were like, Blauer, you teach people how to fucking fight, and I'll do the stand-up.
I'll just stick to the comedy.
Stay in your lane, dude. Worst thing about the lockdown.
I don't get to do stand-up. I don't get to do what I love. But I just fucking miss going out to dinner with my friends, dude.
Right?
I miss people around. I miss the sound of people. I miss the warmth of people in a room. I miss touching people. I fucking really do, man. I miss, I can't stand that all of us have to stand 6 feet apart. I come from cities and I love people and I hate it. I hate it. I hate wearing a mask. I hate seeing other people with masks. I hate seeing old people who look terrified. That bums me the fuck out, man. So yeah, I hate a lot about this.
Good. That's good. Not that it's good. That's good. I love what you answered. We touched on this deeply before. So much information, misinformation, disinformation, competing information, changing information. Where are you getting your info and how are you verifying it?
Such a good question. I'm lucky enough that my parents have an epidemiologist living with them in Utah. And they also have a friend who's a leading virologist. And my other friend, who was a CIA guy, is good friends with, and he's very smart, and he's good friends with an epidemiologist who is, she's a woman who goes to Liberia and Sierra Leone when the Ebola, she's the one who puts the hazmat suits on and gets in there. She's in the hot zones. And she really knows. So I try to really listen to them, the scientists, and not, because every time I listen to politicians, they're getting their information from scientists, but I don't know they are. There's, you know, there are our doctors who are in the public eye, like Fauci and Briggs, tend to be just more political and more cautious in general. So again, though, I'm in a wait and see pattern because I don't think anything I read right now is going to shed much light. I think history is going to judge this, and I hope we learn from it. We
will. This question here, you've answered so many times, but it was what bothers you the most. I think you're very emphatic about the several things. The biggest, the thing that I think that struck me most was you seeing the fear in other people. You know, you're young enough and adaptive enough and resilient enough to go, well, I'm not going to go to, you know, the restaurant tonight and hang out, but I'll, you know, get on Zoom or come over to the kitchen, stand 6 feet apart, and let's have a glass of wine. But seeing that fear, and I know you're serious.
Well, also, you know, the worst thing about growing old, the worst thing for old people is they're lonely. They don't have anybody around them. There are a lot of old people that don't have anybody to talk to, and that's terrible. Right. That's almost the worst thing in the world. Solitary confinement might be the worst thing you can do to a human being. We're social animals. And I really think about that.
I have a couple of people on my team who are I'm very close to, not just because they are on my mobile training team, but I've gotten very close to them. One of them is like his mom passed away and had to FaceTime the funeral. Like nobody, you could, like you couldn't, like nobody was allowed to go.
Fuck that, man.
Isn't that insane?
Fuck that. Fuck that. That makes me mad.
Right. And how do you reconcile that? How do you even, you know?
I don't know. I don't know. Because in Italy, there was a lot of that. You know, in Italy, generations live together. You don't put your parents in an old home. They live in your house. Right. And they would die alone in quarantine in a hospital, not able to see their family. You know, that stuff sucks, man. Yeah. It sucks. So, yeah.
So here's the big question that I hinted at an hour ago whenever we started talking. Without making this political, if I put you in charge tomorrow, what would you do? What would you change right away?
I've thought about this. I don't know enough about the virus, but I would get all the available data. And if it showed what I think it might show, which is that the deaths are of the very old the very infirm and people who have underlying illnesses. I would say, is there a way to open back up, leave that responsibility for people who not only don't live with old people, are not in proximity of old people, but also have the antibodies and are young? Because it seems to me this is a disease that doesn't kill our young and strong. It just doesn't, from what I've seen.
Right.
And I would probably take measures to start opening the economy very soon. And I would place the onus on small businesses to do their best to mitigate spread, because I think small businesses and entrepreneurs can do that. They know how to do that. That means in restaurants, maybe you put less people in restaurants, whatever it might be. Look, listen, we already have supermarkets, et cetera, that do this. We know how to do this.
Right.
And there's no reason small businesses can't do it too. I'm not an epidemiologist, but I happen to think that there's got to be a way where we can target our quarantine, and that rolling shutdowns, massive shutdowns, are just not a viable option at the end of the day. Maybe for 2 weeks, not for 2 months, not for 6 months, and definitely not for a year. No way, no how. It ain't worth it. And that's what I really believe.
I agree.
And maybe as a president, if I took that, people would die. Just like people die from the flu and a lot of other shit. And it would be a motherfucker and a heartbreak. But as a leader, you have to make choices sometimes. The lesser of two evils, you know, that old saying?
Yep.
And I'd probably get crucified for it, but it's what I believe. So
I dig it. It's a good answer. You've shared a lot of very intimate thoughts, some deep stuff, but this next question is kind of like, it's hard to, and you're deep and very self-aware. You know, I think a lot of, you know, when people see your stand-up, like I'll have friends that go, "Oh my God, you're friends with Bryan Callen." They don't realize how insightful you are, how well-read you are, how diverse the wealth of knowledge you have, what you've studied in your whole life.
Just because I'm insecure, but keep
right?
going.
But
I'm afraid I know nothing, but yeah.
Right. But, you know, but the reality is, like, you know, if they see you on Instagram doing a clip or whatever, they don't realize that most of the time when we get together for dinner and stuff, we have talks like this.
Yes.
You know, they're not, you know, we're talking about world shit and life.
We're talking about what's important.
Yeah. And so even though you're on a podcast, you're talking to your buddy, you still know there's a part of your unconscious that goes, okay, I'm on a podcast, this is going to get aired. So this next question is, you're now on your second glass of red wine and you're sitting by yourself and you're talking to your dog and you're going, fuck, right? And so this next question is, what has been the most challenging thing for you? And you're not on the air when you're answering this. Like, and it's funny when I ask this question to people, they want to repeat stuff they already said. But I believe that if we continue to peel the onion, that if we talk for 3 more hours, you'd say something even deeper. Like, and so what is the question is, what has been the most challenging thing for you? And you've already said, like, I know, like, you want to get up on stage and make people fucking laugh, right? We get that. But do you have something else under there? Think about it. And you've got 10 seconds to answer.
Well, no, it's how I come to terms with my own limitations. I'm a limited creature. You know, and as I get older, I realize that I've been way more wrong than I have been right, and that I've taken more than I've given. And I thought about that the other day, and that's a humbling conclusion. So I tend to constantly make these mistakes because my emotions in a time like this, which is another word for fear, gets the best of me, and I end up swinging from one direction or another because somebody says something that makes me feel safe. It makes me feel right. It makes me feel like I've got some backing, and I'll jump over that team. And that's the reason I'm doing it, because at the end of the day, I'm afraid and I'm limited, and that bothers me. And then I think to myself, what am I going to do about that? And that's when I start writing my stand-up. And I think to myself, I'm just going to make that shit funny somehow, because that's the only thing I can do. I used to want to be historically significant. Being historically significant bothered me. I wasn't, because I read The Agony and the Ecstasy, which was the life of Michelangelo by Irving Stone. And I thought to myself, fuck, if that's the bar for an artist, how am I ever going to paint the Sistine Chapel? I should be on my back painting until I go blind. I should go blind for my art, and I never will, and I'm a phony. Well, the problem with that shit, man, is when you try to be historically significant, most people who are historically significant probably became so because it was an accident. Alexander Fleming invented penicillin by accident, and the list goes on. There are people that tried to be historically significant, and they were named Hitler and Stalin, and they were like, "What? No homosexuals, gypsies, or Jews? What I do? What's wrong? That doesn't work." I want to be. It was the guy who invented Twitter historically significant. He might be. There's that funny fucking meme where it's like anybody who said one man can't change the world never ate an undercooked bat. I am trying to embrace the fact that I'm a limited creature. I might not be here tomorrow, and I should just do what I honestly revere and I honestly enjoy doing. And the only value I can add maybe is the fact that I make people chuckle once in a while. Maybe I'm just fucking recess, and that's okay with me.
Heavy, man. Heavy. Okay. I love it. Final message for new fans. Most of my audience are law enforcement, military, martial artists, CrossFitters.
Yes, all people who are trying to build armor, like I am too.
Right.
Those are the people I feel comfortable around.
Well, you're a strange bird dichotomy, because you love guns, you love training, you love battle, you train, you get punched in the head.
Yeah, because I'm terrified I'm a coward. All because I'm terrified I'm not going to be the hero I've always wanted to be, and I'm going to prove to be a coward when the shit really hits the fan. My biggest fear is I'm going to turn and run and not face my maker with eyes open. And maybe I share that with a lot of men and women who are always trying to.
I think most people are scared, and they're scared to say they're scared.
I'm not. I'm afraid all the time. So was Muhammad Ali, by the way, and so is every MMA fighter I know worth his salt. I've had long, deep conversations with those motherfuckers who are like, I'm terrified every time I step into the cage.
It's an interesting thing because Tyson used to puke before he'd go fight.
Fuck yeah, Hickson Gracie and Choke talks about how fear and intelligence are very closely related.
Listen, I'm going to share something with you that is new in my program, but I just started saying in the last 6 months, but I don't know when the last time we got together, but I remind people, and it just occurred to me, and it's one of those things like you say it and you go, fuck, why didn't I ever say that before? But you can't be brave if you're not afraid. And it's
my mother says that all the time.
Fuck off.
Yes, she does, because courage comes. Well, my mother always says courage is when you're afraid and you do it anyway. Right.
Well, that was like Cus D'Amato, Tyson's trainer, said the difference between a hero and the coward is what they do with their fear, that they both feel it.
Yeah. Only fools are truly brave.
But the idea of, and I was talking about this today with Anthony Smith and with other people, where I go, like, a lot of people, they think if they feel fear that it's associated to some lack of skill or a lack of courage or a lack of, and I remind people, like, if you got a death wish and you're not afraid to die, then doing something crazy isn't really bravery. You're okay with that. And
yeah. And by the way, let's be honest. Courage comes from learning how to navigate the space. I mean, okay, you're brave in what context? Courage is compartmentalized. I'm very brave when it comes to standing up on stage and performing for 3,500 people. I doubt I'd be that brave if you put me you plop me among dev crew or a night raid with a bunch of Navy SEALs. I don't know what the fuck to do in that situation. You want me to breach a door, bro? You want me to be the first one through that door? Nah, I think I'll pretend to faint and let somebody else do it.
Right.
I mean, you're brave. Let me throw you in the middle of the ocean in the middle of the night. How are you going to do that? How do you feel?
No,
you want to swim back to the boat?
It's
You know.
it's all adaptation. It's all stress
Yes.
isolation.
Yes.
And but there are people who have, you know, like they've got a predisposition in for whatever, you know, you
That
can't.
might be chemical. That might be chemical. People who don't get afraid, whose heart
Yeah,
rate
yeah,
stays like Chuck Yeager, that might be chemical. I
yeah,
don't know.
and those are the outliers. I'm
Sure.
talking about the most important thing is that, you know, I was thinking about this the other day, is like your intuition whispers in our mind what the right thing to do is, but then fear talks us out of it. And I talk about like, what is the opposite of courage? And I'll ask, like in a classical, what is the opposite of courage? Quick answer. And someone will say, fear. I go, that's an emotion. Someone will go, cowardice. So there's very few real cowards. The opposite of courage is discourage, is this idea that we know, my intuition says I should go save that person. I should go assert myself here. And I should send this food back because it wasn't cooked the way I wanted it. And then we immediately start to visualize somebody spitting on our food, or if I go protect somebody, I'm going to get punched out, or I'm going to get sued. And so it's this idea that the opposite of courage, the way I see it, is discourage. It's when a movie in our mind starts to play a negative outcome, and then we buy that script and we run that play, and then it's fucking done.
Well, you're talking about how to talk to yourself. The most successful people I know just mastered how to speak to themselves.
Right.
That's a huge part of it. Learn how to talk to yourself. See, it's about not indulging in those thoughts of doubt and fear. The learning what not to think about is more important than learning what to think about. And learning what not to think about is a very important thing.
That requires self-awareness, which triggers critical thinking, because everyone—
and practice.
Yeah. And I tell people, it's interesting you said that, because people ask me, well, how do I get good at making these courageous choices? I go, you practice courage.
Practice. Mindset.
I dig it. So final message to your audience here.
This too shall pass. Be ready. Get ready. Use this as an opportunity to do something you didn't have time to do. I hope you have the means, and this too shall pass. This too shall pass. I hope you come through it stronger, and sometimes that's a choice.
I love it.
That's all. Yeah, man. And be kind to somebody. Do something nice for somebody, please. We need more of that. Really, even somebody you disagree with, do something nice for them. They're just as afraid as you are.
I love it. Bryan Callen, thank you for your time.
Tony Blauer, you're a prince. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Haven't seen your son in a while. I miss that kid. Got to call him.
Call him, please. He misses you.
Nick Blauer. If you guys want to learn how to work out, he's in LA. He's awesome.
Thank you.
All right, buddy.
Yeah.
God bless.
So, man.
And God bless America. God damn it. See you, pal.